This section addresses the auditor's evaluation of the consistency of the financial statements between periods, including changes to previously issued financial statements. And the effect of that evaluation on the auditor's report on the financial statements. The objectives of the auditor are to evaluate the consistency of financial statements for the periods presented. And communicate appropriately in the auditor's report when the comparability of financial statements between periods has been materially affected by a change in accounting principle or by adjustments to correct a material misstatement in previously issued financial statements. Current period, the most recent period upon which the auditor is reporting. Evaluating consistency. The auditor should evaluate whether the comparability of the financial statements between periods has been materially affected by a change in accounting principle or by adjustments to correct a material misstatement in previously issued financial statements. The period included in the auditor's evaluation of consistency depend on the periods covered by the auditor's opinion on the financial statements. When the auditor's opinion covers only the current period, the auditor should evaluate whether the current period financial statements are consistent with those of the preceding period, regardless of whether financial statements for the preceding period are presented. When the auditor's opinion covers two or more periods, the auditor should evaluate consistency between such periods and the consistency of the earliest period covered by the auditor's opinion with this period prior thereto, if such prior period is presented with the financial statements being reported. The auditor also should evaluate whether the financial statements for the period being reported upon are consistent with previously issued financial statements for the relevant periods. The auditor should evaluate a change in accounting principle to determine whether the auditor should evaluate a change in accounting principle to determine whether the newly adopted accounting principle is in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. The method of accounting for the effect of the change is in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. The disclosures related to the accounting change are appropriate and adequate, and the entity has justified that the alternative accounting principle is preferable. If The auditor concludes that the criteria in paragraph 7 have been met and the change in accounting principle has a material effect on the financial statements. The auditor should include an emphasis of matter paragraph in the auditor's report that describes the change in accounting principle and provides a reference to the entity's disclosure. If the criteria in paragraph 7 are not met, the auditor should evaluate whether the accounting change results in a material misstatement and whether the auditor should modify the opinion accordingly. The auditor should include an emphasis of matter paragraph relating to a change in accounting principle in reports on financial statements. In the period of change and in subsequent periods until the new accounting principle is applied to all periods presented. If the change in accounting principle is accounted for by respective application to the financial statements of all prior periods presented, the emphasis of matter paragraph is needed only in the period of such change. The auditor should evaluate and report on a change in accounting estimate that is inseparable from the effect of a related change in accounting principle, like other changes in accounting principle. Why change in the reporting entity results in financial statements that in effect are those of a different reporting entity. The auditor should include an emphasis of matter paragraph in the auditor's report that describes the change in the reporting entity and provides a reference to the entity's disclosure unless the change in reporting entity results from a transaction or event. The requirements of paragraph 9 also apply. If an entity's financial statements contain an investment if an entity's financial statements contain an investment accounted for by the equity method, the auditor's evaluation of consistency should include consideration of the investee. If the investee makes a change in accounting principle that is material to the investing entity's financial statements, the auditor should include an emphasis of matter paragraph in the auditor's report to describe the change in accounting principle. Correction of a material misstatement in previously issued financial statements. The auditor should include an emphasis of matter paragraph in the auditor's report. When there are adjustments to correct a material misstatement in previously issued financial statements, the auditor should include this type of emphasis of matter paragraph in the auditor's report when the related financial statements are restated to correct the prior material misstatement. The paragraph need not be repeated in subsequent periods. The emphasis of matter paragraph should include a statement that the previously issued financial statements have been restated for the correction of a material misstatement in the respective period, and a reference to the entity's disclosure of the correction of the material misstatement. If the financial statement disclosures relating to the restatement to correct a material misstatement in previously issued financial statements are not adequate, the auditor should address the inadequacy of disclosure. Change in classification. The auditor should evaluate a material change in financial statement classification. And the related disclosure to determine whether such a change is also either a change in accounting principle or an adjustment to correct a material misstatement in previously issued financial statements. If so, the requirements of the paragraphs apply. 655. That was funny. 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 The auditor's responsibilities relating to other information included in annual reports. This section addresses the auditor's responsibilities relating to other information, whether financial or non-financial information other than financial statements, and the auditor's report thereon included in an entity's annual report. An entity's annual report may be a single document or a combination of documents that serve the same purpose. This section also may be applied and adapted to other documents. This section is written in the context of audit. This section requires the auditor to read and consider the other information, because other information that is materially inconsistent with the financial auditor's knowledge obtained in the audit may indicate that material misstatement of the financial statements or that material misstatement of the other information exists, either of which may undermine the credibility of the financial statements and the auditor's report thereon. Other information may include amounts or other items that are intended to be the same as, to summarize, or to provide greater detail about amounts or other items in the financial statements and other amounts or other items about which the auditor has obtained knowledge in the audit. Other information may include non-financial information. The auditor's responsibilities relating to other information other than applicable reporting requirements apply regardless of whether the other information is obtained by the auditor prior to or after the date of the auditor's report. The auditor's responsibilities under this section do not constitute an assurance engagement on other information or impose an obligation on the auditor to obtain assurance about the other information. Law or regulation may impose additional obligations. The objectives of the auditor, having read the other information, are as follows: to consider whether a material inconsistency exists between the other information and the financial statements, To remain alert for indications that material inconsistency exists between the other information and the auditor's knowledge obtained in the audit, or a material misstatement of fact exists, or the other information is otherwise misleading. To respond appropriately when the auditor identifies that such material inconsistencies appear to exist, or when the auditor otherwise becomes aware that other information appears to be materially misstated, to report in accordance with this section. Definition: annual report, a document or combination of documents typically prepared on an annual basis by management or those charged with governance in accordance with law, regulation, or custom, the purpose of which is to provide owners or similar stakeholders with information on the entity's operations and the entity's financial results. And financial position as set out in the financial statements. An annual report contains, accompanies, or incorporates by reference the financial statements and the auditor's report thereon, and usually includes information about the entity's developments, its future outlook, and risks and uncertainties. A statement by the entity's governing body and reports covering governance matters. Annual reports include annual reports of governments and organizations for charitable or philanthropic purposes that are available to the public. Misstatement of the other information. A misstatement of the other information exists when the other information is incorrectly stated or otherwise misleading. Other information, not financial or non-financial information other than financial statements and the auditor's report thereon, included in the entity's annual report. Obtaining the other information, the auditor should do the following: through discussion with management, determine and obtain management's written acknowledgement regarding which document or documents comprise the annual report, and the entity's planned manner and timing of the issuance of such documents. Make appropriate arrangements with management to obtain in a timely manner, and if possible prior to the date of the auditor's report, the final version of the document or documents comprising the annual report. When some or all the documents determined in A will not be available until after the date of the auditor's report on the financial statements, request management to provide a written representation that the final version of the documents will be provided to the auditor when available and prior to the document's issuance by the entity, such that the auditor can complete the procedures required by this section. If the auditor becomes aware that the entity did not provide the auditor with the final version of the documents determined in accordance with paragraph 13A to be part of the annual report prior to the issuance of those documents to third parties, the auditor should take appropriate action. Communication with those charged with governance. The auditor should communicate with those charged with governance the auditor's responsibility with respect to other information, the procedures performed related to the other information, and the results. Reading and considering the other information. The auditor should read the other information and consider whether a material inconsistency exists between the other information and the financial statements. As the basis for this consideration. To evaluate their consistency, the auditor should compare selected amounts or other items in the other information that are intended to be the same as, to summarize, or to provide greater detail about the amounts or other items in the financial statements with such amounts or other items in the financial statements. While reading the other information in accordance with paragraph 16, while reading the other information in accordance with paragraph 16. The auditor should remain alert for indications that a material inconsistency exists between the other information and the auditor's knowledge obtained in the audit. A material misstatement of fact exists or the other information is otherwise misleading. The author is not responsible for searching for omitted information or for the completeness of the other information. Responding when a material inconsistency appears to exist or other information appears to be materially misstated. If the auditor identifies that a material inconsistency appears to exist or becomes aware that the other information appears to be materially misstated, the auditor should discuss the matter with management and, if necessary, perform other procedures to conclude the following: whether a material misstatement of the other information exists, whether a material misstatement of the financial statements exists, whether the auditor's understanding of the entity and its environment needs to be updated. Responding when the auditor concludes. I wonder if my mom already left for work, because I thought she was going on an errand and then coming back and then going to work, but it doesn't seem like she's back yet. And I thought she was going to leave slightly earlier. That was funny. Responding when the auditor concludes. Responding when the auditor concludes that a material misstatement of the other information exists. If the auditor concludes that a material misstatement of the other information exists, the auditor should request management to correct the other information, and if management agrees to make the correction, determine that the correction has been made. If management refuses to make the correction, communicate the matter to those charged with governance and request that the correction be made. If the auditor concludes she's back that a material misstatement exists in other information obtained prior to the date of the auditor's report and the other information is not corrected after communicating with those charged with governance, the auditor should consider the implications for the auditor's report and communicate to those charged with governance about how the auditor plans to address the material misstatement in the auditor's report. Withhold the auditor's report or withdraw from the engagement when withdrawal is possible. If the auditor concludes that a material misstatement exists and other information obtained after the date of the auditor's report, the auditor should do the following. If the other information is corrected, perform the procedures necessary in the circumstances. If it's not corrected, take appropriate action considering supplementary information. Oh my gosh. What's the difference between other information and supplementary? Earth. Why is this even a thing that we need? Evaluate the presentation of the supplement. Information. Use of comments. Okay. But yeah, I definitely prefer weekly quizzes to having tests. Even though I have to kind of study every week for the quiz, it's at least we don't have to study for a test. Oh my gosh. It's just small chunks of studying rather than like waiting till 2 days, the day before the test, and then doing a million hours of studying all at once. And if you bomb a quiz, it's not as bad as if you bomb a test. So. Well, if I bomb this quiz, that means I'll probably have bombed around 3 out of the 11 quizzes. So, and when you average it all out, it's not going to be as bad. Even with the 3 bombed quizzes, I did decently well on the rest of them. So. That was funny. How is that not charged yet? In addition to the procedures performed during the audit of the financial statements, in order to opine on whether supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole, the auditor should perform the following procedures using the same materiality level used in the audit of the financial statements. Inquire of management about the purpose of the supplementary information and the criteria used by management to prepare the supplementary information, such as an applicable financial reporting framework, criteria established by a regulator, a contractual agreement, or other requirements. Determine whether the form and content of the supplementary information complies with the applicable criteria. Obtain an understanding about the methods of preparing the supplementary information and determine whether the methods of preparing the supplementary information have changed from those used in the prior period, and if the methods have changed, the reasons for such changes. Compare and reconcile the supplementary information to the underlying accounting and other records used in preparing the financial statements or to the financial statements themselves. Inquire of management about any significant assumptions or interpretations underlying the measurement or presentation of the supplementary information. Evaluate the appropriateness and completeness of the supplementary information, considering the results of the procedures performed and other knowledge obtained during the audit of the financial statements. Obtain obtain written representations from management. That it acknowledges its responsibility for the presentation of the supplementary information in accordance with the applicable criteria, that it believes the supplementary information, including its form and content, is fairly presented in accordance with the applicable criteria, that the methods of measurement or presentation have not changed from those used in the prior period, or if methods of measurement or presentation have changed, the reasons for such changes, about any significant assumptions or interpretations underlying the measurement or presentation of the supplementary information, and that when the supplementary information is not presented with the audited financial statements, management will make the audited financial statements readily available to the intended users of the supplementary information no later than the date of issuance by the entity of the supplementary information and the auditor's report thereon. The auditor has no responsibility for the consideration of subsequent events with respect to the supplementary information. However, if information comes to the auditor's attention prior to the release of the auditor's report on the financial statements regarding subsequent events that affect the financial statements, or subsequent to the release of the auditor's report on the financial statements regarding facts that had they been known to the auditor at the date of the auditor's report, may have caused the auditor to revise the auditor's report, the auditor should apply the relevant requirements in the subsequent reporting when the entity presents the supplementary information with the financial statements. The auditor should report on the supplementary information in either a separate section in the auditor's report on the financial statements with the heading Supplementary Information or other appropriate heading, or in a separate report on the supplementary information. The supplementary information section in the auditor's report on the financial statements or separate report should include the following elements: a statement that the audit was conducted for the purpose of forming an opinion on the financial statements as a whole; a statement that the supplementary information is presented for purposes of additional analysis and is not a required part of the financial statements; a statement that the supplementary information is the responsibility of management and was derived from and relates directly to the underlying accounting and other records used to prepare the financial statements; a statement that the supplementary information has been subjected to the auditing procedures applied in the audit of the financial statements and certain additional procedures, including comparing and reconciling such information directly to the underlying accounting and other records used to prepare the financial statements or to the financial statements themselves, and other additional procedures in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America if the auditor issues an unmodified opinion on the financial statements and the auditor has concluded that the supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole; a statement that in the auditor's opinion the supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole; If the auditor issues a qualified opinion on the financial statements and the qualification has an effect on the supplementary information, a statement that in the auditor's opinion, except for the effects on the supplementary information of referred to the paragraph in the auditor's report explaining the qualification, such information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. When the audited financial statements are not presented with the supplementary information, the auditor should report on the supplementary information in a separate report. When reporting separately on the supplementary information, the report should include, in addition to elements in paragraph 9, a reference to the report on the financial statements, the date of that report, the nature of the opinion expressed on the financial statements, and any report modifications. When the auditors report on the audited financial statements, you may now stop. You may now stop. Stop, 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 stop. When the auditor's report on the audited financial statements contains an adverse opinion or a disclaimer of opinion, and the auditor has been engaged to report on whether supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to such financial statements as a whole, the auditor is precluded from expressing an opinion on the supplementary information. When permitted by law or regulation, the auditor may withdraw from the engagement to report on the supplementary information. If the auditor does not withdraw, the auditor's report on the supplementary information should state that because of the significance of the matter disclosed in the auditor's report, it is inappropriate to, and the auditor does not express an opinion on the supplementary information. The date of the auditor's report on the supplementary information in relation to the financial statements as a whole should not be earlier than the date on which the auditor completed the procedures required in paragraph 7. If the auditor concludes on the basis of the procedures performed that the supplementary information is materially misstated in relation to financial statements as a whole, the auditor should discuss the matter with management and propose appropriate revision of the supplementary information. If management does not revise the supplementary information, the auditor should either modify the auditor's opinion on the supplementary information and describe the misstatement in the auditor's report, or if a separate report is being issued on the supplementary information, withhold the auditor's report on the supplementary information. Stop, 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 stop. That was funny. Required supplementary information. This section addresses the auditor's responsibility with respect to information that a designated accounting standards setter requires to accompany an entity's basic financial statements, hereinafter referred to as required supplementary information, in the absence of any separate requirement in the particular circumstances of the engagement. The auditor's opinion on the basic financial statements does not cover required supplementary information. The objectives of the auditor when a designated accounting standards setter requires information to accompany an entity's basic financial statements are to perform specified procedures in order to describe in the auditor's report whether required supplementary information is presented and communicate therein. When some or all of the required supplementary information has not been presented in accordance with guidelines established by a designated accounting standard setter, or when the auditor has identified material modifications that should be made to the required supplementary information for it to be in accordance with guidelines established by the designated accounting standards setter. Stop. Stop. Applicable financial reporting framework. Applicable financial reporting framework. The financial reporting framework adopted by management, and when appropriate, those charged with governance in the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements that is acceptable in view of the nature of the entity and the objective of the financial statements, or that is required by law or regulation. Basic financial statements presented in accordance with an applicable financial reporting framework as established by a designated accounting standard setter, excluding required supplementary information. Designated accounting standards setter, a body designated by the Council of the AICPA to promulgate GAAP pursuant to the Compliance with Standards rule and the Accounting Principles rule of the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. Prescribed guidelines. That's fine. Prescribed guidelines, the authoritative guidelines established by the designated accounting standard setter for the methods of measurement and presentation of the required supplementary information. Required supplementary information that a designated accounting standards setter requires to accompany an entity's basic financial statements. Required supplementary information is not part of the basic financial statements. However, a designated accounting standards setter considers the information to be an essential part of financial reporting for placing the basic financial statements in an appropriate operational, economic, or historical context. In addition, authoritative guidelines for the methods of measurement and presentation of the information have been established Procedures. The auditor should apply the following procedures to required supplementary information. Inquire of management about the methods of preparing the information. Including whether it has been measured and presented in accordance with prescribed guidelines, whether methods of measurement or presentation methods of measurement or presentation have been changed from those used in the prior period, and the reasons for any such changes, and whether there were any significant assumptions or interpretations underlying the measurement or presentation of the information. Compare the information for consistency with management's responses to the foregoing inquiries. The basic financial statements and other knowledge obtained during the audit of the basic financial statements. Obtain written representations from management that it acknowledges its responsibility for the required supplementary information. About whether the required supplementary information is measured and presented in accordance with prescribed guidelines, about whether the methods of measurement or presentation have changed from those used in the prior period, and if so, the reasons for such changes, and about any significant assumptions or interpretations underlying the measurement or presentation of the required supplementary information. If the auditor is unable to complete the procedures in paragraph 5, the auditor should consider whether management contributed to the auditor's inability to complete the procedures. If the auditor concludes that the inability to complete the procedures was due to significant difficulties encountered when dealing with management, the auditor should inform those charged with governance reporting. The auditor should include a separate section in the auditor's report The auditor should include a separate section in the auditor's report on the financial statements with the heading Required Supplementary Information or other appropriate heading. The Required Supplementary Information section in the auditor's report. On the financial statements should include language to explain the following circumstances as applicable. The required supplementary information is included and the auditor has applied the procedures in paragraph 5 of this section. The required supplementary information is omitted. Some required supplementary information is missing and some is presented in accordance with the prescribed guidelines. The auditor has identified material departures from the prescribed guidelines. The auditor is unable to complete the procedures. Paragraph 5. The auditor has unresolved doubts about whether the required supplementary information is presented in accordance with prescribed guidelines. If the entity has presented all or some of the required supplementary information, the required supplementary information section in the auditor's report on the financial statements referred to in paragraph 7 should include the following elements. A statement that identified the applicable financial reporting framework. For example, accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America require that identify the required supplementary information be presented to supplement the basic financial statements. A statement that such information is the responsibility of management and although not a part of the basic financial statements is required by identified designated accounting states who considers it to be an essential part of financial reporting for placing the basic financial statements in an appropriate operational, economic, or historical context. If the auditor is able to complete the procedures in paragraph 5, a statement that the auditor has applied certain limited procedures to the required supplementary information in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, which consisted of inquiries of management about the methods of preparing the information of the methods of preparing the information and comparing the information for consistency of management's responses to the audited inquiries of basic financial statements and other knowledge the auditor obtained during the audit of the basic financial statements. A statement that the auditor does not express an opinion or provide any assurance on the information because the limited procedures do not provide the auditor with sufficient evidence to express an opinion or provide any assurance. The auditor is unable to complete the procedures in paragraph 5. A statement that the auditor was unable to apply certain limited procedures to the required supplementary information in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States because state the reasons. A statement that the auditor does not express an opinion or provide any assurance on the information if some of the required information is omitted. A statement that management has omitted description of the missing required supplementary information that identify the applicable financial reporting framework, for example, accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America, require to be presented and to supplement the basic financial statements. A statement that such missing information although not a part of the basic financial statements is required by the who considers it to be an essential part of financial reporting for placing the basic financial statements in an appropriate operational, economic, or historical context. A statement that the auditor's opinion on the basic financial statements is not affected by the missing information if the measurement or presentation of the required supplementary information departs materially from the prescribed guidelines. A statement that, although The auditor's opinion on the basic financial statements is not effective. Material departures from prescribed guidelines exist. Describe the material departures from the applicable financial reporting framework. If the auditor has unresolved doubts about whether the required supplementary information is measured or presented in accordance with prescribed guidelines, a statement that although the auditor's opinion on the basic financial statements is not effective, the results of the limits and procedures have raised doubts about whether material modifications should be made to the required supplementary information for it to be presented in accordance with guidelines established by BLIP. If all the required supplementary information is omitted, the required supplementary information section in the auditor's report on the financial statements should include the following elements: a statement that management has omitted this, that they required to be presented to supplement the basic financial statements, a statement that such missing information, although not part of the financial statements, is required by BLIP, who considers it to be an essential part of financial reporting for placing the basic financial statements in an appropriate operational, economic, or historical context, a statement that the auditor's opinion on the basic financial statements is not affected by the missing information. Drawing attention to things. The objectives of the auditor, having read the other information, are as follows: to consider whether a material inconsistency exists between the other information and the financial statements, to remain alert for indications that the material inconsistency exists between the other information and the auditor's knowledge obtained in the audit, where material misstatement of fact exists or the other information is otherwise misleading, to respond appropriately when the auditor identifies that such material inconsistencies appear to exist or when the auditor otherwise becomes aware that other information appears to be materially misstated, to report in accordance with this section illustration 1. Wait. That's it. The auditor has not identified an uncorrected material misstatement of the other information. Other information. Management is responsible for the other information. The other information comprises this, but does not include the financial statements in our auditor's report thereon. Our opinion on the financial statements does not cover the other information, and we do not express an opinion or any form of assurance thereon. In connection with our audit of the financial statements, our responsibility is to read the other information and consider whether a material inconsistency exists between the other information and the financial statements. What the heck? What? They didn't even say that they... They didn't even state the fact that there was nothing. They just said what they're supposed to do, and they didn't say the result of what they did. What? 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 As described below, we have concluded that such a misstatement exists. They literally just don't say a single thing. They just say, what? Okay, well, that's not really that important. I don't know. Supplementary information section in the auditor's report on the financial statements. When the auditor is issuing an unmodified opinion on the financial statements and unmodified opinion on the supplementary information. In our opinion, the information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. Why didn't he go over other illustrations, like the second one? And then 1 and 2 for this. All of it is omitted. Has omitted this. Jeez. Maybe what I'll do is just go to the easy ones. So 725, 4, and 9 are the only ones. Oh, jeez. Supplementary information. Alright, that's funny. That was fun. Supplementary information is information presented outside the basic financial statements, excluding required supplementary information. That is not considered necessary for the financial statements to be fairly presented in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. Such information may be presented in a document containing the audited financial statements or separate from the financial statements. Number 9. Oh, come on. Really? Gosh. When the entity presents the supplementary information with the financial statements, the auditor should report on the supplementary information in either a separate section in the auditor's report on the financial statements with the heading supplementary information, or another appropriate heading, or in a separate report on the supplementary information. The supplementary information section in the auditor's report on the financial statements or a separate report should include the following elements. Yeah, I could just read, instead of reading all these requirements, I could just read the statement itself, the illustration of the statement. A statement that the audit was conducted for the purpose of forming an opinion on the financial statements as a whole. A statement that the supplementary information is presented for purposes of additional analysis and is not a required part of the financial statements. A statement that the supplementary information is the responsibility of management and was derived from and relates directly to the underlying accounting and other records used to prepare the financial statements. A statement that the supplementary information has been subjected to the auditing procedures applied in the audit of the financial statements and certain additional procedures, including comparing and reconciling such information directly to the underlying accounting and other records used to prepare the financial statements or to the financial statements themselves, and other additional procedures in accordance with the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. If the auditor issues an unmodified opinion on the financial statements and the auditor has concluded that the supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole, a statement that in the auditor's opinion the supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. If the auditor issues a qualified opinion on the financial statements and the qualification has an effect on the supplementary information, a statement that in the auditor's opinion, except for the effects on the supplementary information of, refer to the paragraph in the auditor's report explaining the qualification. Such information is fairly presented in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. That was funny. 11? Did I already read 11 for this? I thought I did. The objectives of the auditor, having read the other information, are as follows: to consider whether a material inconsistency exists between the other information in the financial statements, to remain alert for indication that a material inconsistency exists between the other information and the auditor's knowledge obtained in the audit, or a material misstatement of fact exists, or the other information is otherwise misleading, to respond appropriately when the auditor identifies that such material inconsistencies appear to exist, or when the auditor otherwise becomes aware that other information appears to be materially misstated, to report in accordance with this section. The objective of the auditor when engaged to report on supplementary information in relation to the financial statements as a whole is to evaluate the presentation of the supplementary information in relation to the financial statements as a whole. and report on whether the supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. The objectives of the auditor when a designated accounting standards setter requires information to accompany an entity's basic financial statements are to perform specified procedures in order to describe in the auditor's report whether required supplementary information is presented and communicate therein when some or all of the required supplementary information has not been presented in accordance with guidelines established by a designated accounting standards setter, or when the auditor has identified material modifications that should be made to the required supplementary information for it to be in accordance with guidelines established by the designated accounting standards setter. All that crap. Man, there's too much stuff. Too much stuff. Necessary to draw users' attention to a matter appropriately presented or disclosed in the financial statements that, in the auditor's professional judgment, is of such importance that it is fundamental to users' understanding of the financial statements, not required to modify the opinion include in the paragraph a clear reference to the matter being emphasized and to where relevant disclosures that fully describe the matter can be found in the financial statements. Paragraphs should refer only to information presented or disclosed in the financial statements. Indicate that the auditor's opinion is not modified with respect to the matter emphasized. Other matters matter other than those that are presented or disclosed in the financial statements that in the auditor's professional judgment is relevant to users' understanding of the audit, the auditor's responsibilities, or the auditor's report. The auditor should include an other matter paragraph in the auditor's report, provide that when section if the auditor expects to include an emphasis of matter or other matter paragraph, the auditor should communicate with those charged with governance regarding this expectation and the wording of the paragraph. Why are there so many for 708? It's like the entire thing. The objectives of the auditor are to evaluate the consistency of the financial statements for the periods presented. The auditor should evaluate the change in accounting principle to determine whether the newly adopted accounting principle is in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. The method of accounting for the effect of the changes in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. The disclosures related to the accounting change are appropriate and adequate, and the entity has justified that the alternative accounting principle is preferable. If the change has a material effect on the financial statements, include an emphasis of matter paragraph. If not met, evaluate whether the accounting change holds material information. Appreciation thanks to the state for the correction of material statement in the reference to disclosure. Emphasis of matter paragraph. A paragraph included in the auditor's report that is required by GAAP or is included at the auditor's discretion and that refers to a matter appropriately presented or disclosed in the financial statements that in the auditor's professional judgment is of such importance that it is fundamental to users' understanding of the financial statements. Other matter paragraph. A paragraph included in the auditor's report that is required by GAAP or is included at the auditor's discretion and that refers to a matter other than those presented or disclosed in the financial statements, then the auditor's professional judgment is relevant to users' understanding of the audit, the auditor's responsibilities, or the auditor's report. Annual report. Misstatement of the other information. A misstatement of the other information exists when the other information is incorrectly stated or otherwise misleading. Other information, financial or non-financial information other than financial statements in the auditor's report thereon included in an entity's annual report. Supplementary information. Information presented outside the basic financial statements excluding required supplementary information that is not considered necessary for the financial statements to be fairly presented in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. Such information may be presented in a document containing the audited financial statements or separate from the financial statements. information that a designated accounting standards setter requires to accompany an entity's basic financial statements requires some information is not part of the basic financial statements. However, a designated accounting setter considers the information to be an essential part of financial reporting for placing the basic financial statements in an appropriate operational, economic, or historic context. In addition, authoritative guidelines for the measure. That was funny. That was funny. What? That was funny. That was funny.